Welcome to my world. Come on in and make yourselves at home. Welcome to my life. I know everything's gonna be all right. Welcome to my world. Oh, won't you come on in? Welcome to my life. It's known as the Tiger's Den. Greetings to all of my subscribers. I want to thank you for being with me for as long as you have, and the new subscribers that's coming on in. We want to say greetings and thank you for your time. This is from Toothless and the moderators. Welcome to the Tiger's Den. Greetings and welcome to the Tiger's Den. This is the voice of Cheryl, and I am Toothless Tiger. Coming to you on Election Day in Fulton County. Actually, the state of Georgia. But we want to talk about Fulton County. Mainly, we want to talk about DA Fani Willis in her race. Also, we'd like to also mention the Honorable Judge Scott McAfee. I saw him on an interview on the Real Dinah Show with Judge Joe Brown, and it was an excellent interview. I am much of the opinion of Judge Joe Brown. I like his business acumen. And whatever the outcome, I wish him the best. He seems to be a brilliant young man who's trying to do the right thing. He understands law and not emotions. Therefore, he knows what to do and how to do it. Unfortunately, for most of us, the masses, we understand emotions and not law. If we did, we'd know that we get color of law. Artificial, something that's not real. A semblance. A simulacrum. That's what we get. Be that as it may, I want to talk about Fani made her debut on MSNBC with Rachel Maddow. As you can see, my thumbnail. I thought it was very interesting, the things that she said. And she was very dogmatic about it. So I understand the people that work up under her and how they have the temerity to speak like they speak to other people that are adults with careers, and they speak to them with total disregard for their humanity, in my opinion. I don't know what time the polls close in Georgia. When we vote here in Texas, they close at 7 p.m. If that holds true for Georgia, we're right in the last hour, because it is 5:17 Central Standard Time, which makes it 6:17 Eastern Time. And I'm going to share some videos. Hopefully they'll play right. You know how they do. Unfortunately, I'm not an editor, so I have to do the best I can. But I want to give you a story. I want you all to understand how this lady speaks and how she lies compares to the audience that she's speaking with. And I'm really hoping that the people were able to get out and get the vote out to vote her out. But just in case they did not, just know it's not over. The Constitution of the United States gives us all the right to petition our government. And so she can go. It's called impeachment. But she still has to make the primary if she wins this race in November. And of course, she believes that there is no competition. So that's what the grassroots will need to work on. But I'm going to start out with a video from the UK Immigration and Travel News. And I want to thank everybody that I'm going to use their video and allowing us to use their videos under fair use. I will be doing commentary, criticizing, teaching, and scholarship. And of course, I give honor to whom honor is due. So let me start, because I don't want to make this a long video, but I know it's probably going to go longer than I would like because of my lack of editing skills. So here we go. Let's start with the race.
Former President Donald Trump's election interference case, and Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, the judge overseeing the trial. Both face primary challenges. A loss by Willis could delay or derail the sprawling case. The prosecutor has mounted against Trump and his alleged co-conspirators. The entire future course of the election case hinges on the outcomes. Georgia State University law professor Anthony Michael Christ told Axios, if Willis does not win, her successor could choose to not pursue the case. Although both Willis and Fulton Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee are favored to win. Elections will be the first show of confidence from voters about the elected officials' jobs. Fani Willis, who in her first term in office launched high-profile cases against Trump and Young Thug, faces a challenge from Christian Wise Smith, a former Fulton prosecutor and unsuccessful 2022 Georgia Attorney General candidate. Smith says he would continue the Trump prosecution. He says Willis should have spent the $1 million paid to Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor with whom Willis had a romantic relationship on other cases. The Georgia Court of Appeals is expected to take several months to rule on the former president's request to review McAfee's decision not to remove Willis, according to Georgia Recorder. The winner of the DA Democratic primary will take on Courtney Kramer, the only Republican candidate to qualify in November's general election. Kramer worked in the Trump White House and on Trump's campaign. McAfee, a former state inspector general, appointed to the bench by Gov. Brian Kemp in DEC 2022, faces defense attorney Tiffany Johnson and civil rights attorney and radio host Robert Patillo in a non-partisan race. If McAfee loses, his successor would most likely take on his caseload. Barring any successful challenges to their impartiality, Christ says, it is possible that it could be reassigned at random.
Well, it's already buffering pretty bad. Hopefully, it doesn't sound too bad coming across to you guys. That's just the beginning to let us know what this is all about. But then we're going to go and we're going to talk about this DA. And so what we're going to go to next is her interview with Rachel Maddow, MSNBC. Because what I want to do is show you...
Let's start by asking you...
I want to show you the character of a person. You don't have to know a person personally to know who they are. Their behavior tells you who they are. Their words can tell you anything. And that's true for me and anybody. But you look for consistency, compassion, commitment, honesty, integrity, a moral compass that you don't try to cross when you're meeting people. You treat people with respect in hopes that you will receive respect in return. Love and respect, I was taught, is earned. You can't buy it. You can't even demand it. All you can do is behave in a manner in which you would allow people to behave with you. And if they cross whatever your boundary is, then it is time to be done and move on. Let's listen to what I consider a dogmatic interview. And I want you to listen to Rachel. And you know, I really used to like Rachel. And I believe it was because of my like for Barack Hussein Obama. Because that's who, when I started looking at MSNBC, was when he was running for office. And I wouldn't miss a Rachel show. And I hear Rachel tonight speaking with this woman, and all I hear is politics. I actually call it politricks, but you can call it what you like. But just listen to the compassion that she has for the Democratic candidate. And trust me, in my opinion, Democrat is no different than Republican because they're wings of the same bird. What makes them different is the nation, the globe, was set up on a republic form of government. And anything other than that actually deviates from its origin. Some call it a coup d'etat when you do something outside of its originality. Call it what you like. But just know, a republic form of government means that the people are self-governed and we choose individuals to speak to other nations on our behalf because no one wants to speak to a whole nation of people. And the example that I give is if you have a sick loved one and you have to speak with the doctors, they can't speak to everybody in the family because somebody's going to feel one way and somebody's going to feel another way. Somebody's going to feel their way. And they can't get tied up in those emotions. Sometimes they have to make quick, life-changing decisions, and they need a level-headed individual to be able to speak on behalf of the family and the loved one. So that's what we do when we choose individuals to represent us to other nations. Unfortunately, some didn't like it. So they chose to go another way. There came the Democratic Party. And it's amazing, when we were slaves and had no civil rights, we were Republican when we got the right to vote, because we believed in the republic form of government. But unfortunately, around 1964, a little bit before then, we were persuaded to go the Democratic way. They said they'd pick our leaders, and they did. And our leaders led us astray. And they're doing the same thing today. So, let's listen to this interview.
About what?
I guess I need to include the interview.
What your life has been like and how things have changed over the course of this past year. I know you have bodyguards. I know you had to leave your home because of ongoing threats against you. I saw footage last week at an event honoring the South Fulton police. You got a little bit emotional, thanking the police for having kept you safe in what has been a remarkably threatening environment for you. I wondered what effect the sort of constant threat of violence that you've been living with has had on you and on your ability to do your work.
Thank you for asking. Not many people ask about what is the personal journey that's been going on. And it really hasn't been happening in the last year. It's been happening since about a month after I took office. From the time I took office, I began to get threats. Those threats come in the way of emails. Those threats come in the way of phone calls, text messages, any which way you can imagine. At some point, the threats became where I had to leave my home. And I've been out of my home since the first year in office. They've come from a variety of sources. One of the first things that ever happened was there was a protest at my house at 5 o'clock in the morning. People mad because the last administration had left police cases, lots of them, and they wanted immediate action on them. And so that was the first thing that kind of happened. But the threats have certainly been about lots of different kinds of cases that I've prosecuted. People are very unhappy with them because of some recent cases that most of them are racial in nature. It has cost me to leave my home financially. I'm paying for, my mortgage because I refuse to give up the home where I raise my children, but also paying for another establishment. And I have
I want to stop right there. She said a mouthful. In the beginning, she started out with the threats against her and the bodyguards that has been put in place for her security. And that's really strange to me for the simple reason the two people that I know of or the news have spoken of that has threatened her does not live in Atlanta. They are brought up on charges, rightfully so. But how much of a threat is it, really? And I think it's the words that they use. So you always want to give caution to ensure that that doesn't cause a problem. But it's just mind-blowing that she speaks of all of these different types of threats that come against her. Yet, no one in Atlanta has been locked up. Matter of fact, I did a video where I found that one of the news stations under the Freedom of Information Act tried to get the information on the phone calls and the threats that it's been lodged against her, and so far they haven't found any. So perhaps that's true, I don't know. But we do know what it's like to go Hollywood. Just look at her. I mean, that doesn't even look like the same person. And the makeup that she has on, is she trying to match the suit? I mean, what is it? It's not too becoming. And I guess one would say, why are you talking about her person? I'm talking about her person because she's making her person different. And she's trying to portray to be something that she's not. And that's why I call her the actress. I think the majority of these people are really trying to make a name for themselves. And they're trying to find their way to Hollywood. And one of the ways to get there is to be a special guest of Rachel Maddow and tell this story. So I wanted to talk about her saying that she pays her rent. She said that she pays for her home and she pays for an additional place to stay. What's strange about that to me is in the Senate hearings, they were talking about her having bodyguards. And what's shameful, how the commissioners that have to fund her budget has no clue on how she spends the money that they have to fund for the public. So there is several videos, and they have them broken down in parts. And so we're going to go to part 4. And we're going to talk about the security detail. And we're going to talk about her talking about she has to pay for her mortgage and a place to stay, when in all honesty, they're paying $4,000 a month and have been for approximately 2 years for her. And she is not paying it out of the salary that they pay her. This is in addition to. And we don't really know the total amount because this CFO, I believe is what she is, has no knowledge, although she can get to the records. The chairman of the board, he's totally lost, Mr. Pitts. The attorney, she has knowledge of the law, but she knows, you can hear it in her voice when she has to give an answer, that they are totally lost when it comes to these individuals who calls themselves the constitutional officers. They're elected by the people, and they swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of their state. But if you are supposed to be working on good faith, honor, valor, and integrity, and you give them a budget with line items of what you need, and once that budget is approved, you decide, because you're a constitutional officer, that you no longer want to spend it for what they gave it to you for. You're going to spend it for what you believe you need to spend it on. Then I think that's the problem. And it's a moral turpitude problem, in my opinion. Just one woman's opinion. So let me just go to video number 4. We're going to come back and visit this in a minute, right where we left off. And we're going to go to video number 4. And we're going to go to a specific part. Let me see if I can find my part I want to go to. I kind of have it stopped where it'll go where I need it to go. So we'll be right there. Let me present it to you. And if you don't mind, please take notes so you can or you can just go back and listen again and again. But take notes, because it's very interesting when you take notes and then start looking things up. Or go look at the real video itself. It'll be very, very interesting. And I'll do my best to have these videos inside the description.
Is that sufficient? Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, what?
I appreciate that. There were a number of references to Ms. Willis having significant expenditures for her personal security detail. Is that something that was presented to you in a budget request?
So, repeat that one, sir.
There has been testimony before the committee about the district attorney, Ms. Willis, having significant expenditures for a personal security detail that may even travel with her on these trips that she takes. Is that something that was presented to the commission as a part of a budget request, the cost of that?
I don't know whether or not, as a matter of course, the district attorney has a security detail. I don't know the answer to that.
Did Mr. Howard ever have a security detail?
I know that he had. We had some security enhancements around his home at one point because of some threats that he'd received.
Okay.
Now, with respect to District Attorney Willis, again, I don't know whether she routinely had a security detail or whether we paid for one. But in this particular instance, because of the YSL trial in particular, and the
What does YSL stand for?
Young Slime Life, I believe.
Okay,
correct?
so that's
Young Slime Life.
That's the gang-related prosecution's been going on for a year now.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Because of that trial and the election interference, it came to us in executive session that she was receiving, as were a number of us, me included,
Yeah.
particularly during the election back in 2020. I had a detail with me, but because of the YSL trial and the election interference, she was receiving threats, bodily harm, pretty serious. So a report was made to us about that in executive session, and a request came to us on her behalf to provide additional security for her. And after listening to what was going on, we, the board, listened, and then in open session decided and voted to provide additional security for her.
What's the cost been for that additional security, and is it continuing up until today?
I don't know whether it's continuing, but do you have the cost from the security?
As I recall, the full ask that was presented included relocation, as well as some hardening of her personal residence. and law enforcement support from at least 2 outside jurisdictions. I don't recall what all of the amounts were, nor can I tell you that I have seen an invoice from either of those other external jurisdictions. The relocation costs run about $4,000 a month.
Was that relocation cost renting her this condominium where she and Mr. Wade would meet?
I don't know the physical address of either of those locations, so I really wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Do you know who you were making the payments to for this, for the rent?
We do. I do not, but I certainly know who we cut a check. Well, I know how to obtain who we cut a check to,
Okay.
but I don't see those expenses every month.
Has that continued, the relocation expense? I mean, essentially, the county is providing extra security at her personal home, but also renting her a separate location she can live in or sleep at. And I'm not going to ask you to disclose that location. Is that continuing?
The expenses are continuing.
And how long have they been going on?
I believe they began in the later portion of 2022. I don't recall the exact date. I would have to research that.
All right. Thank you.
Now, she just said that this was actually something that she was paying for. You heard her say that. Words are very important, and I emphasize that all the time. And it really pays to get a dictionary and look up the words that we say and the words that we hear and we use every day. We need to look them up in the oldest dictionary we can find and in the law dictionary. And there's also an etymology dictionary that gives you the origin of a word to let you know when it first started being used. It's very important to do that. Then you'll learn how to actually communicate. When you figure out what part of speech a person is using when they use certain words. We take things for granted. You know, sometimes something that may sound like a noun could be a verb, could be an adverb, could be a pronoun, could be an adjective. You know, it's just different things that can be. And so we need to really go back to just our beginning, our educational system. You know, we learn those things from kindergarten to the 3rd grade. We need to go back because we forget, you know, life happens and we forget things. But it's very important to listen to what people say, because you'll be surprised once you sit and think about it or hear it again, how different it sounds. Because she just said boldly to the world that she has to pay for 2 places. And this woman in this Senate hearing just said she could get the checks who they cut them to. Interesting. As I shared so many different times, Robin Yearty, and I'm going to bring her, she's going to come up again today, was the lady at first where she was, you know, I would say just slumming off of her, but if they want to say that she was paying her, then I wonder, did she declare that rent on her taxes? These people make a lot of statements and they don't really understand what they're saying or the ramifications of what they're saying. But we're all are not asleep. Some of us really hear what you say and we're wide awake. And it doesn't mean that we have everything in order. No, it doesn't. We're doing our reasonable service. And that's what this is for me. I took it upon as an opportunity to share my life, as well as to have another stream of income. The income is not going too great, but I love sharing my life, my knowledge, my skills. And in any way that I can help, and the way I help is by my knowledge, I try to find myself doing that. So we heard that. I stopped it because Miss Tipson, her issue is going to come up. They're not going to necessarily talk about her, but they're going to talk about what has happened to her, filing a complaint against the employer for discrimination and whistleblowing. So I want to play that little part as well before I left this video, because it's on this video, and then we'll go back. So let's just listen to how the attorney explains about the discrimination laws and the whistleblowing laws, and how long it has been since she even looked at the law. It sounds so sad, but I'm sure it's like this throughout the United States. And when we do our jobs, they hold us to the letter of the law. These people claim that's what they're about, but no, they give us the color of law. And it's very important to look that up in the legal dictionary so you can really understand, understand, and overstand why things don't work out for us like we think they should. And we know we're doing the right thing. It's not always us. It's not always you. One moment.
Ms. Joe, you had mentioned this, I don't know if I'm calling it a civil rights office, but what is the county's structure for receiving complaints of employment discrimination against the county or any agency of it?
So employees who have complaints regarding their employment conditions have a couple of different possible routes. One of them is DCRC, and now I am blanking on what the acronym stands for, but I think it's the
Diversity and Civil Rights Compliance.
Okay, so it is. We've
Diversity and Civil Rights Compliance.
Yes, we've kind of outsourced our initial point of contact for EEOC type violations internally, and that is done outside of my office, and then at some point in the process we may get involved later on down the road, but it begins at DCRC. And then we also have a whistleblower hotline that is established that routes to our county auditor, and whistleblower complaints can be investigated in that manner as well. So those are the two
by the auditor
primary
or
routes.
DCRA?
DCRC.
DCRC, okay. Is that a confidential process?
I would say so. It is confidential even from me at the outset, unless it develops into litigation or an EEOC complaint. So it should be confidential from the employee's point of view when they present the complaint.
Does the employee's employer learn of such a complaint? Some type of employment violation?
Employer meaning their manager or whoever they are, the subject of their complaint?
Right.
I would not expect that person to be made aware unless and until there's a point in the investigation where that becomes necessary in order to obtain necessary information.
Like their explanation or defense?
Yes, when they would be made aware of the complaint in order to provide a response.
Okay. And insofar as the whistleblower hotline, that's confidential as well, I would presume?
Yes, under state whistleblower laws, the identity of the whistleblower is kept confidential for as long as possible.
And does the county have its own whistleblower policy?
The county does also have a whistleblower policy.
Is that a written policy?
I have not looked at it in probably over a decade.
Wow.
I believe it's an order.
This is the county's attorney, and she hasn't looked at it in over a decade. She's going to go on to explain why. But just look what Miss Tipson was up against. All of these lawyers and all of their semantics. I don't know if you all are aware, but every year they have conferences that attorneys and lawyers attend to learn semantics. Look up the word. And I'm sure you all know. So I don't want to sound like I'm insulting anyone's intelligence. But these are things we really need to know. We've got to come out of our emotions. The Honorable Noble Drew Ali said, in order for us to get anything accomplished, we got to first circle our passion, square up on our conduct, and speak in an intelligent tone. And if you can do those things, whether they do something about it or not, they will listen. I've learned in my 42 years of working, before I retired on disability 13 years ago, I've learned that if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And they believe in karma. They believe in the law of reciprocity. They believe in whatever you reap, you shall sow. That's why we don't know enough. We volunteer for too much. And that's how we enter back into servitude. I'm going to play this just a little longer, let her explain about her time, and then we're going to move on.
Ordinance that mirrors the state whistleblower statute, but I would have to confirm that.
Does it prohibit retaliation against somebody for bringing forth a complaint of impropriety or wrongdoing?
Yeah, I would expect that it does include that, because if it mirrors the statute, then it would include the anti-retaliation provisions.
So how long have you been with the county attorney's office?
2.5 years as the county attorney, and then 10 years prior to coming back as the county attorney, I was a line attorney in the office for 4 years. So.
Okay. What do you make of this constitutional officer argument, so to speak, that constitutional officers are not subject to any supervision or control by the county commission?
So, are you asking for my personal opinion or my understanding of the state of the law?
I'd love to have them both. Let's start with the law, because we may be looking for ways to change laws, and I'd be interested in your personal views from your experience.
So, as to the state of the law, I will say that the challenge presented for my office, for the board, and to some extent, I would imagine, for the officers involved, is that there is this inherent conflict created by the state of the law, wherein there are certain elected officials who are essentially embedded with the county, provided facilities by the county, provided either employees or supplemental employees by the county, equipment by the county, a budget for operations by the county. Those officials must interact with the county, for example, in order to process payment vouchers. They have to come back to the county even in instances where they may have independence or latitude in contracting, for example. They still need to come back to the county finance department in order to get a check cut. in order to pay on these contracts that they may have control over, but they can't cut a check directly to the vendor. So there is this kind of built-in tug of war where two parties who are essentially operating independently, one is funding another without any necessary input or oversight into the process or any of the contracting, but essentially is on the hook when it comes to processing the payments, when it comes to supplementing budgets after the fact in order to make up for budgetary shortfalls because of those expenditures, and ultimately may be left with the legal liability and exposure should there be any issue with the way in which those services were obtained. So I do believe there are some practical and legal challenges for all counties and elected officials who are in this kind of in-between state where you have independence, but you depend on the county for finances and processing, and where the county has an obligation to fund, but doesn't have any control over ensuring any kind of standards or protocols in the expenditure of those funds.
Very well stated. If you are probably as knowledgeable in this interface of the county governments and state elected officials or county elected officials, in the case of a DA, as any attorney around, if you have suggestions to our committee on how we might could clean this up a bit through statutory amendments or modifications, please feel free to give those to me. Okay. And while I have you there at the witness chair, I, as the county attorney, I have mentioned to you sort of pre-meeting, if there are any documents that you have produced to us so far, you've got the whole notebook in front of you, or that you may produce in the future as you complete the document production that you feel like you contain confidential personal information or otherwise privileged information, please identify that to me. You've been so good here to have all these documents bait stamped so we can very clearly identify which pages you're talking about. Then I will treat them as confidential within this committee. We will not be making these documents public other than available for review of committee members until I hear back from you, hopefully in the next week or two.
Thank you,
Fair
Mr.
enough?
Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've heard that. Now we're going to go back and listen to our DA before we go a little further into her living arrangements. She's going to go past that, but I want to just let you all hear some more of her before I decide to play any more videos.
Let me start by asking.
I want to go up some. I don't know exactly where we stop. This is where she's bringing race, and this is something that we have always been accused of as Asiatic individuals, is there they go playing the race card. But isn't it ironic that nobody is saying that while this lady keeps bringing up race? We understand that this system was not designed with us in mind. We understand how the good old boy system works. It works the same for all of us. None of us are exempt, even though some may have more privilege than others. Do hear me. I see the world as human race. It's only one. All others are ethnicities that they gave us to divide us, to keep us at odds with each other. The only way a few can rule the masses is to give us something to divide us, for it is written, a house divided against itself cannot stand. That holds true for a nation, for a country, for a globe of people. But I think it's really strange how everything she says, and everybody is embracing it. To me, they're using us, the mothers of all life, as a weapon against the world. And that's wrong. Whether you agree with me or not does not matter. I am a person. I voice my opinion. You voice yours. If they happen to jive, we're good. If they do not, we're good. I don't agree to disagree with anybody. We disagree, and then we move on to the next subject. That's how adults work, at least in my world. Again, when I learned that when you're disagreeing with someone, you're arguing with them, my daddy taught me that. I don't agree to argue. We just disagree and move on. We don't have to argue. It's okay. Let's hear what this lady has to say. And let me add, if you look at the title that Rachel has, Republican Efforts to Sabotage Georgia Prosecution of Trump Hit Brick Wall with Fani Willis. Republican. Now, the people that are affected the most in Fulton County, from what they keep telling us, are Asiatic. I don't see any Aryan Brotherhood being brought up on RICO charges. I don't see any Mexican mafia groups being brought up on RICO charges. You see, one thing, I think I told y'all about this the other day. The Usual Suspect. I love that movie. Kaiser Soze. He said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince the world that he didn't exist. So now we are to believe that Massa, the European male, has been in charge all this time. This good old boy system that we all know about but can't speak on. We are to believe that now that they are allowing Asiatics, Asians, Latina, Hispanic, I don't know the proper politically correct terminology, but whatever you identify as, now that they're allowing them in there, we're going to get treated differently because they can relate to the people? I don't think so. We're looking at it. Now, these women throughout the United States, like they're losing their minds. And of course, it's not just Asiatic women. We know it's European women too. But let's keep the focus on where the cameras keep the focus. Because they paint a picture for us. Tell lie vision. Yeah, they almost tuba vision us. Most of the people on YouTube don't care about humanity, it seems. And let me correct myself when I say most, because there are some great people on YouTube. I'm talking about in the entertainment, the people section. A lot of those people feed off into people's pain. And people love to laugh and pay for your pain. They don't give much to those of us who want you to be awakened and to know the truth and to walk and live in truth. We've been taught the truth of our parents, but many of them were not taught the truth. But it is put into all of us to know right from wrong, unless you have a defect at birth. And perhaps you may not be able to discern right from wrong. But the majority of us that are born in what we know as good health, and before life happens to us, we know. We come out saying no, not yet. We have to learn yes. We come out saying stop, not okay. We have to learn that. And we have to be taught that. A lot of us, we miss out on lap time. That nurturing time. You know, we carry our babies for 9 months. The next 3 months are supposed to be the bonding time. But many of us have to go back to work in 6 weeks. And there is that separation. It starts then. Those of us who are blessed enough to be at home with our babies and brave and courageous enough to breastfeed our children. What a beautiful, beautiful act of love that is. I was able to be at home with my son. I wasn't able to breastfeed. It was very painful, and I did not know that it was going to be, so I did not adjust. Sometimes I really hate that because I see my niece, I call her my daughter, and she breastfed her children, and they are some of the most healthiest children that you ever want to see. Rarely do they get ill. Rarely. It's amazing. And that's nature's way. We were given that at birth, the opportunity to do that. Before I go too deep, let me get back on my subject. I appreciate everybody for looking. If you've looked this far, if you would, please hit the like button. Share this with somebody. Comment, please. Leave some type of comment. And subscribe to my channel. I'd also like for you to become a member. I have memberships as low as 99 cents. And membership really does help us. Especially, it helps us to grow our channels and to receive a paycheck. I don't have a whole lot of people looking at my videos, so I don't get a lot of views. But I do get views, and I thank each and every one of you for viewing. And I hope if you can't look at the whole thing at one time, you'll just say, let me just go look at a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, until you've looked at the entire video. I know they tend to be a little long. But again, I truly want you to get it.
Cases that most of them are racial in nature. It has cost me to leave my home financially. I'm paying for, my mortgage because I refuse to give up the home where I raise my children, but also paying for another establishment. And I have 24-hour really protection around me. So it's a very interesting way to live, but it's well worth it. to have the honor of being the first female district attorney in Fulton County, it pales in comparison to what my victims are going through. And the reality is, one of the reasons we are upsetting people is we are so successful here in Fulton County. I have the third largest crime drop in America. We have it because we're taking a balanced approach, both unapologetically going after gangs and violent criminals and anyone who should violate the law in my county, but we're also doing programs. And so it has been a huge sacrifice, but it's well worth it for my community.
She said she's going after gangs. And she said she has programs. Well, let's see. I'm sure Miss Amanda Gibson would tell us something totally different. I just believe let's just hear a word or two of what she would tell us. And it's very necessary for me to do this. So I know you probably just saw this the other night. But I'm just like the word, repetition strengthens and confirms. Like I said, if you read the first 4 Gospels, you'll read the same thing, just from 4 different men.
So
and was it in the same job? The same job?
No, because when she came into the office, she actually abolished the gang prevention unit. So the unit in which I led previously no longer existed. So
here's the woman that's doing all the gang getting rid of. And the only thing it sounds like she got rid of was the office that dealt with the gangs. So what is this about? Just think about it. And I know that we don't live in Atlanta, but for the people that live in Atlanta and still holding on to the dream that they keep selling them of Dr. King, it's time for other people to dream and then wake up and bring their dream into fruition. Because the only thing that comes to a sleeper is a dream. And when they awaken, they awake to a nightmare. Okay.
I applied for the director of juvenile diversion, and that's the role that I interviewed for and ultimately got. There were several other individuals that I know personally that applied for the same position, and ultimately those 9 people felt that I was the right person for that job. So the idea that I was a holdover is absolutely disingenuous.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the whistleblowing when you brought this to the attention of the district attorney, Fani Willis. Approximately when was that, and how did that come up? And this is to either one of you, however you want to answer it.
Well, I'll answer it. So, and this is where interviews get a little tricky because they're memory based. And so I just really want to rely on the complaint. The OJJDP issue was constantly from, I would say, May through the time that she had her job taken away, was constantly brought to the attention of staff members, high-ranking staff members, chief of staff for Fani Willis, and I believe Amanda did try to reach directly out to Fani Willis through an email. Now, the issue with the junior DA program is the same, but then it was directly stated, and it was either November or December, I can't remember the exact date, but it was directly stated in a meeting that was recorded with Fani Willis. And, you know, it's interesting. Employers sometimes don't like it when employees record them. the problem is when you're dealing with government, especially government officials, this is sad to say, I was an elected official too. If you don't have a recording, especially if you're dealing with law enforcement also, then you're going to be the one stuck out because people are going to make it a he say, she say thing, but we don't have that here. Ms. Timpson has a recording where she absolutely expresses her concerns once again about the inappropriate misappropriation use of funds. I mean, it's just really a straightforward situation, and that's what makes it so uncomfortable and also untrue to say she's just a disgruntled employee.
All right, well, what happened then? I guess this is what your lawsuit's about. What happened after you brought this to the attention of Fani Willis?
Well, the first time and I'll let her speak after I say this, the first time she brought it to the attention and she actually put in a text message that there are multiple lawsuits that could be filed, she was given an entirely different, you're talking about somebody that was the director of juvenile diversion, was given a piece of paper that said, you're a part of my executive staff, and that was just stripped from her, and she was put under the direct report of 3 different people eventually, 1 immediately, and then 3 different people, and not able to use her skill set at all. That happened.
So she got demoted.
Oh, absolutely.
And how soon after raising this with DA Willis did she get demoted?
In the same meeting, in the second, I was cut off in the middle of my I was cut off in the middle of my sentence and told effective immediately, you are demoted to the role of file clerk. And so
you went from being on the executive staff, so to speak, to being a file clerk because you said, look, I don't think we're using the federal money right.
Correct.
Well, what I would say to that, I hate to cut it off, is not just because she said we're not using the federal money right, because Amanda was persistent about it. See, that's what gets you in trouble in government situations and even private sector. You might say something one time and somebody might say, hey, check yourself. Amanda kept doing it. And
well, why did she keep, well, let me talk about that. So why would she feel it was so important to be so persistent and to keep raising the issue?
I'm very passionate about the work that I do.
And I know in that moment, I'm going to say in that moment that the Honorable Phil Holloway, he's an attorney, I'm going to say that he acts that as a question, playing the devil's advocate, or maybe somebody may have a question like that in their mind. But if he's sworn to the same oath and integrity and honor that he should have been taught at home and that he swore to uphold in his oath of office, that he knows exactly why she was so persistent. So I don't think he was asking that to be disrespectful. I think he was asking that question, and I'm going to give him that, because people will have all sorts of questions when you're standing for right. Number one, because you're oftentimes going to be standing alone. And so people wonder, how can you do this? Where does that come from, that you need to continue to stand? But all you have is your name, your honor, and your integrity. And if you don't stand for something, you will fall. And you'll fall for anything. So I just want to say that right quick and let me get back to him.
I've worked with justice-involved youth and for 15 years, and I knew that I wouldn't be the person that I believe that I am if I allowed something like that to happen. I do have a high moral compass, I would say, and these are youth that are 12 to 17 who are vulnerable, who need these resources, and I don't think that it's our right to use them in any other way than they're supposed to be used.
Well, we hadn't really talked about this. How, if they weren't used for the purposes that they were intended, we did talk about this with the junior DAs, but with the gang center, how was the money being used if it wasn't being used right?
Well, I can say how it was said it was going to be used. Ultimately, I was taken off of obviously I was demoted, so I no longer had access to certain things.
Okay, what did they tell you then? How did they tell you they were going to spend the federal money for the gang center?
Specifically, Michael Cuffey said numerous times that he was going to use a portion of it for a Mac computer lab consisting of 24 Mac computers. He also wanted to use it for travel, and he also
Who's
wanted
travel? Who's travel?
He just said travel. He wasn't very specific about that. He was just saying travel within the programs department. Essentially, that's what I received from it. And swag. So there was a lot of rebranding going on in the office, logos and all this. It was very important to them. And so, obviously mugs and all these things, they cost money.
We're talking about Fani Willis DA mugs and Fani Willis DA swag.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And the computers, the Mac computers, was this for use at the DA's office?
I honestly cannot say. He just kept saying a Mac computer lab. I did see that in his rebuttal in the recent article. He said that he wanted to do it for the center, I guess. That was never conveyed to me. But even if it was for the center, the grant explicitly says 0 on the line where it says equipment. It doesn't allow for any equipment. So even if he says that was the use, it still wouldn't have been.
All right, so
to attract not just all the attention that a district attorney in a big place like Fulton County is always going to get locally for all of the important issues that affect the people of Fulton County, but to become a household name around the country, including by people who decided they were going to make your life hell for having brought one particularly very high-profile case. Do you feel like you've changed over the course of this term in office, over the course of this 4 years, in terms of having to develop new skills, new resources, develop a thicker skin than you might not have expected when you took this case when you ascended to office January 1st, 2020?
This job has certainly made me closer to God because you have to go into prayer often. So that's just the truth. So that's a positive, right? When you're getting closer to God. But I can't explain to you how much I love the work that I do. I can't explain to you how loved I feel by my community. You really should feel sorry for those that are trying to deter me from my work. It doesn't do anything but motivate me to continue to work and to work hard. And so I'm not someone that's going to be broken, but certainly it has caused me to get thicker skin or to be more resilient, to dig deeper, to work harder. But what it has not done is deter me from my work.
Let me ask you about an interesting development that happened with a former Democratic governor of Georgia, Governor Roy Barnes. It emerged over the course of the Trump case and some of the, forgive me, the mishigas around that, that you had asked Governor Barnes if he would consider joining the prosecution as special counsel in that case. And it emerged that he said no, saying, quote, "I wasn't going to live with bodyguards for the rest of my life," which is a commentary on what it takes to be part of the legal system in this era, taking on politically powerful people. But Governor Barnes, as far as I understand it, has since offered that if the Republican-controlled legislature in Georgia comes after you with this new investigative committee that they seem to have formed specifically to come after you, with some of the other ways that they seem to be targeting you, that if you need legal representation of a specialty form as part of the way they're coming after you through the legislature, that he will represent you in those matters. I just wanted to ask if that's your understanding and what you make of that, those interactions that you've had with former Governor Barnes.
No, Governor Barnes is my attorney. They have decided in Georgia that they would like to come over after me. They use false reasons for wanting to come after me. I don't know if you remember, and I believe we talked about it last time. Georgia had never had a prosecutorial oversight committee, and all of a sudden, 14 minorities were elected to office to serve as district attorney. And now all of a sudden they need an oversight committee to look after district attorneys because they want to tell us how to prosecute and who to prosecute and where we should put our resources, as opposed to allowing the voters that put us in these seats to make those determinations. The voters in my community are very clear that they want crime rid out of their communities, but they want it done both by removing violent offenders, which is what we have done. We've gone after gangs and we've worked with our police departments to do so. But they also want second chances for low-level offenders, and we have done those programs. What is so ironic is although it's only 14 of the 50 DAs in the state of Georgia, most of the citizens report to our jurisdictions. So although we're smaller in number than the other 36, most of the population has elected these minority DAs to serve them and has trusted their judgment. But apparently we now need daddy to tell us how to do our job.
So we all heard that. Let's see here. Okay, now let's hear about this money and how it's being spent. Well, we honestly don't know how it's being spent. We're going to hear how it's being dispersed, how it's being given.
What amount of general funds from the county are allocated to the district attorney's office on an annual basis? I guess we'll just talk about this year to start with.
In 2024, the district attorney's allocation was $36.6 million from the general fund.
Okay. Chairman Pitts has tried to explain to me that there are several buckets of funds that are used to fund the district attorney's office. Would you kind of run that through for me as to what additional funding over and above the $36.6 million of general funds from county tax revenues that are allocated to the district?
Yes, sir. The district attorney, in addition to the county's general fund resources, also has resources that are available through the confiscated asset forfeiture fund, as well as the Victims Witness Assistance Fund, federal asset forfeiture funds, and we keep all of these in separate funds, and then a number of different grants that come through the state and federal grant process. And then since really the middle of 2021, when we developed our spending program for the resources that we received through the American Rescue Act, the district attorney has also had resources available for what we call our Project Orca, which is our court backlog project that was funded out of our ARPA resources.
Okay, let me slow down on that one just a minute. Did you say Project Orca, like an orca whale?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that acronym, does that stand for something you could help tell us?
It's more, I guess, visual than that. It just was intended to mean that it was a very, an orca is a very large ocean mammal, and the court backlog that we had as a result of the slowdown in the court system during the pandemic was also very large. So the individual who was charged with developing a program to address the court backlog named it Project Orca, but it is our official court backlog reduction program.
And this is funded through federal funds?
Through our ARPA resources, yes, sir.
Right. And the ARPA money was put in to sort of help all the states recover from the COVID epidemic?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know the amount of ARPA funds that were allocated to the district attorney's office or the ORCA project?
I don't have that number available with me today, but I can share it.
And as far as the expenditures of that fund, is that anything that the county commission had authority or discretion over where the money went, how it was spent?
Specifically, is your question specific to the ARPA resources themselves?
Yes.
Yes, sir. They determined where and how our ARPA resources would be utilized. The county executive team made a recommendation, and the Board of Commissioners adopted that recommendation, and we have modified it over the course of time as we have continued to execute on our spend for the ARPA resources.
And one of the areas you allocated some of the ARPA funding was to this ORCA project.
Yes, sir. In total, about $75 million is what we allocated to Project Orca.
And who else was allocated funds through the ORCA project in addition to the district attorney's office?
Most of the partners from our justice system received funding out of the Project Orca resources. The district attorney's office, the state court, superior court, magistrate court, public defender, the sheriff's department, I believe juvenile court received some. So we took a look across the entire justice system to see where we would need to plug in some additional resources in order to develop a work plan to, bring our backlog that had accumulated, to bring those numbers down.
So if $75 million was applied to the ORCA project, do you know what amount of the $75 million went to the district attorney's office?
I don't have the exact dollar amount with me. I can tell you that she did receive funding to cover 75 positions, which was the highest number of positions that were provided across the justice agencies. But I'm sorry, I didn't bring that. I don't have that number with me, and I don't know it off the top of my head.
I'm not certain if we even requested that. I know that you are continuing to compile for me the essentially the ledger or roster of employees employed by the district attorney's office, and I suppose we'll be able to break this out as you compile that data, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any idea how many employees in the district attorney's office now?
I believe she has about 277 employees, plus the positions in Orca, so a little over 300, maybe 340.
And that would include assistant district attorneys and investigators and secretarial help, the entire spectrum of staff?
Yes, sir.
Will the Orca funds expire anytime soon or be exhausted? I know if it came through ARPA, that's sort of winding down at this point, right?
Yes, sir. We are undertaking an effort currently to ramp down our Orca spend within the $75 million that was allotted and within the general time frame that was provided for the spending to occur, which is 12/31/2024.
Right. So we're at the tail end, the last year of that, huh?
Yes, sir.
The way you described the budget process sounds very similar to the state budget process, where it's almost a continuation budget from the year before, and then there are requests for additions, increases if you need more staff or if circumstances have changed or need to make a capital expenditure.
Yes, sir. I mean, we tend to start from the previous year and build onto that. If a department received funding in a previous year that was not intended to be part of their recurring budget, then we make adjustments for that. That's why I said we provide them with a base budget, so that base budget each year will reflect the ins and the outs from, whatever transpired in the previous year's budget cycle. So if a department received funding for a particular project or purpose that's not intended to happen on an annual basis, then we pull those monies back out and readjust their and realign their base budget.
Okay. How much detail does the district attorney's office provide when they make their annual budget request? Is it fairly itemized by employee, by expenditure type, where it goes?
In our process, we provide them with a line item version of their budget in our budget development application. We provide them with a position summary. So we give them a report of all of their positions, and it's as of a point in time, and they are required to make any corrections to that position summary report, because that becomes the basis for their salary and fringe benefit budget for the base year. And then they are allowed to go in and align the operating portion of their budget in whatever manner suits their operational needs. We do have a couple of object codes that we really do not allow them to deviate much from, because they are necessary to fund things like our risk management fund. So, we have an object code specifically for that. That's a rate times the number of positions that you have. So there's no deviation there. But they do have the ability to go in and adjust their budget. They are requested to provide details, contract names and amounts for specific contracts. So like our Department of Real Estate and Asset Management would come in and identify their contractors that they have and their contracts that they have for things like janitorial services. If they have professional service contractors, they would identify them. It is an ask. Some departments do a better job of others than, providing a lot of detail and support for their asks. So, we spend a lot of time and a lot of back and forth trying to understand, especially when they have submitted for an enhancement request or a new program, trying to make sure that they've put everything in that they should be including in those requests. But they do have the opportunity to align it how they would like to see it and provide detailed explanations for their requests.
And Chairman Pitts, back to you just for a minute. That's why I was letting her get into the minutia there, because I know that's why you hired her, right?
That's correct.
Okay. The way you've explained it to me is that with certain elected officials that are provided for under the Georgia Constitution, like the district attorney's office and the sheriff's department, these are elected officials, and our state constitution provides the sort of parameters of their authority and responsibilities, right?
That's correct.
For those, particularly those two, a sheriff and a district attorney, do you micromanage their budget, or is it fairly well left within their authority under the state constitution?
Well, they're what we call constitutional officers, and we have 3 or 4 of those. And then the district attorney is in a sort of a different category. But also, now I'll have to defer to get the correct terminology from our county attorney. But constitutional officers believe that once their budget has been approved by the Board of Commissioners, then they are free to manage that budget any way they see fit. And that's because of this law, I suppose, that gives them that authority.
So you can't micromanage their spending once you've granted them the budget, appropriated the money to them from the general funds?
Probably not. And that's, I guess the answer to that would be no, we cannot.
But essentially, you don't have to appropriate money to them unless they can justify for you why they need it and what they intend to spend it for. The line item listing that Ms. Whitmore just referenced.
Right. When the departmental budget comes to us, and say, even with the constitutional officers, there are line items, but we fund the line items, and that results in a total. But once we've approved it, they can disregard the line items that we have approved, and therein lies, I guess, a source of conflict from time to time.
Do you have a good grasp on exactly how much money runs through the DA's office budget every year? You know, $36.6 million comes from your general funds from the taxpayers of Fulton County. And then they have money that they get from these forfeitures and from a portion of fine money. And then they may have grants, et cetera, both state and federal on top of that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the state itself funds a certain number of positions, including the district attorney's salary and a certain number of assistant district attorneys based on the number of judges in the circuit.
That's my understanding, yes, sir. But we do not monitor that. And what we are aware of is that the 36 plus million that comes from the general fund, and rarely do we keep up with how much they receive from grants or fines and forfeitures and things of that nature.
Right. That's something that's within the control of the.
So as you can see, this good old boy system's been going on for years. There is no checks and balances. It didn't just start, but in Fulton County, they've had 2 Asiatic DAs for the past 24 years. So they've been going along with this system, and that's what they call the go along, get along gang. Life is changing, times is changing, and all you have to do is put someone that doesn't look like you in the office, so when it all falls through, guess who it all falls on? I mean, it's simple mathematics. It's not rocket science that these people are using against us. These are some unscrupulous people who don't care about our children, but they care about theirs, so they go with the status quo for as long as it'll go. And that's what we have to remember. Just because they look like you don't mean that they hold your values, your core beliefs. They don't necessarily hold those things dear to their heart. You got to look at behavior. You got to attend meetings. Maybe if you can't go, send somebody who can. You got to know what's happening when the doors are closed, but it's open to the public. It's very important that we join the adulthood of life. That's why they call us minorities. Because minority in law means you have not reached the age of maturity. And so you can't think for yourself. Someone has to do it for you. We got to stop that type of mentality and be who your mother created you to be. Life happens to us all. It really does. But there are ways to overcome things that happen to us in life. And we can overcome things by gaining knowledge. It is so very liberating.
District Attorney's Office.
Correct.
Okay. Do they ever report that amount to you? I mean, it would seem in the course of making a budget request to you, they need to show a need for money, and that would necessarily require them to show you what they're getting from other sources to figure out what they need from you.
As a matter of course, that is not provided to us. Now, whether that is made available during the budget process with staff, I'm not sure.
We will look at other sources that they have available when they're asking for an enhancement to see if there is another source that could be used instead of the general funds. I guess I would just like to perhaps add a little clarification to what the chairman just said about the other sources of funds. Those are maintained on the county's financial system. So we do have the federal asset forfeitures, the confiscated assets. There are buckets of those. They are presented to the board in the special appropriation grant funds. The board, there is no reporting that comes forward to the board on those. And, because the board isn't authorizing those resources, they come from other sources. There isn't a lot that comes back to the board on those. From a grant perspective, like a federal grant perspective, we do present the grant applications that are made on our grant activity report to the board. And again, the grant activities and reporting are captured on the county's financial system and are included in our required single audit report each year. So that's the reporting, but there is no other reporting that is completed on those funds by the district attorney to the Board of Commissioners.
But from your accounting standpoint, you're the chief financial officer. When these funds from whatever source get deposited in a bank account, somebody's got to make an entry. The deposit was made and where it came from.
Yes, sir. So if resources are received, then they are presented over to the county treasury. They're deposited, and within these funds, then the spending credit, if you will, is provided to the agency that's receiving the funds. We have, multiple agencies that receive federal asset forfeiture funds and confiscated asset funds. So we track it by each department within those funds, and when the resources are received, they are given credit for them. On the grants, many of the grants are, of course, drawdown grants. So we're spending county's the county's resources first and seeking reimbursement from the granting agency. So whatever the required drawdown process is, our grants administration office in the finance department would be involved in assisting and facilitating the the financial reporting requirements. Programmatic reporting requirements are typically managed directly by the department or agency that has received the grant. But our grant administration unit will ensure that the whatever periodic required financial reporting is complete, and that the drawdowns are completed on a timely basis so that the county is not fronting that money for too long of a period of time.
And tell me what you just referenced, a single audit. What did you mean by that?
That's the audit that any entity that receives a federal grant is required to have completed on an annual basis. Our external auditors complete the single audit. It is a specific audit of all federal and state grant funds.
And is that broken out between your various county agencies and departments, including the district attorney's office?
Yes, the auditors have a requirement to identify major programs and audit on a risk basis, and so they determine which programs may get a more thorough and very specific audit process, but all of the grants are included, and all of the information that they ask for is provided to them as part of that single audit process.
Right. So is that a written document report that you would receive every year?
The single audit?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And is that a requirement of each agency, including the district attorney's office, to provide the requested data and information to the auditor?
It is, yes.
By reviewing that, are you able to pretty well track all of the spending of grant funds anyway by the district attorney's office?
At a summary level. It's not detailed. It just basically gives you, the total amounts.
Of what?
So we see how that works. It's a mess to know how much money these people have at their disposal. And it goes the same for the courts. So now we can kind of see why they love being judges and why they can act the way they act inside the courtroom. When you look at the ORCA money and the $75 million, and nobody knows exactly who got what. It's questionable, but they'll find out this week because they're supposed to get the rest of those documents to them. So perhaps they already have them before they meet. I don't know if they're supposed to meet Friday or Thursday, but I know he proposed one or two of those days that they would meet. And so that's that. I'm getting close to 2 hours, and I have a couple of more things I want y'all to see. So let's see here. I wanted to go with number 2. So just give me a moment and let me put up number 2. It looks like some weird stuff is happening out there in YouTube land. Looks like Melanie has a good one out there. Melanie King.
I don't recall seeing.
Okay, let's see what he's saying. And I don't know if I really feel so bad for this man or not, but he seemed like he just lost in translation. He doesn't know what's going on, and he's the commissioner and has been for some on the board certainly for 20 years, commissioner for quite a few himself. He's been quite a few things, and this is the politics that goes on in a chocolate city. And so, you know, it's really downright embarrassing, to be real honest. It's downright embarrassing. And all we always say, if we just get a chance, if we just get an opportunity, we'll show you how to do it. We know how to do it, but are we doing it? That's the question. And with no checks and balances, we can see, no, we're not.
Things. So you said supporting documentation. What kind of supporting documentation would there be for a professional services payment to a law firm?
Typically their billing statement.
Do you have supporting documentation to show you a contract with them, with the independent contractor between the legal services provider and the district attorney's office or the county?
The contracts typically are not provided as part of the supporting documentation. It can be requested, but
from you or from the DA's office?
If I have it, I will provide it. If I don't have it, and it's something that I can't get, then I wouldn't be able to provide it.
Okay. Because this is sounding to me kind of like the Wild West. Very little control from Fulton County over a $36 million budget. You don't know how much of that is spent on professional services, who is hired, how much they're paid per hour, what their total compensation is, yet you're being asked to provide $36.6 million a year that you know encompasses a number of those type of independent contractors that you're funding with no oversight or control, right?
Yeah, the Board of Commissioners has no oversight over the district attorney.
Okay. So your only control is the power of the purse, whether you continue funding money that can be used for those purposes, or whether you restrict that funding. Is that fair, Chairman Pitts? I guess that's really your question.
Could you repeat that, Mr. Chairman?
So your only control is the power of the purse, is either granting or rejecting requests for additional funding from the DA's office.
That's correct.
Okay. And that has to be based upon assurances presented to you by the DA as to why she would need particular amounts of funding?
Right. The DA can come before the board and make a request at any time, and we would consider the request, and if we agree, then we'll grant it.
Right.
If we disagree, then we won't grant it.
And in that request, do you require her to give some specifics? Some who I want to hire, why I need to hire somebody, how much I want to pay them, what's going to be the cap on their
We don't
service?
get into that sort of detail. I mean, she'll would make a case as to why the need is there and what it would cost. But as far as individual names and what the compensation for a given individual would be, we don't get that kind of detail, nor do we ask it.
Did DA Willis ever make a request for specific funding for a special assistant DA, prosecuting DA, for these for Mr. Wade?
Not to my knowledge.
And is her position that she doesn't have to ask or provide that information to the county in order to make a supplemental funding request?
Well, again, with respect to the special prosecutor, that's solely the purview of the district attorney, unlike the outside counsel.
All right. But you fund the district attorney based upon her stated needs or her request for funding, right?
Correct.
Okay. In her budget request, does she have a category for special prosecutors?
I don't recall seeing a special category.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would have to say that she, as have prior district attorneys, have asked for resources, trial expense resources,
right,
without it being specific to X amount for a special prosecutor or X amount for expert witnesses or, things like that. I think that it's been more like we know we have these major prosecutorial matters that will be moving forward and will require, additional resources. But I don't recall there being any specific line item details necessarily associated with that.
All right, so we heard.
Now, we've seen her expert witnesses, and it's a sin and a shame in the Young Thug trial. Those people are not experts. And they didn't need any additional monies. How much are they paying these people? And how much are they giving them back? Because this doesn't make sense. And this is just a reasonable person would have these thoughts and questions. Does not mean that's what they're doing. Those are just questions that pop into the mind of a reasonable person. Because we know Gaither, Dennis, Racy, Belknap, we know those people, Quinn, we know those people are not experts. All of them were caught in lies. And this is nothing that I'm saying. This is something that's on tape. And if you would look at it, you would see the same thing. Maybe you see it differently than me, but you cannot argue the fact that they're lying because it's proven on tape. They have no records. And in the world of contract, in the world of corporations, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. This is the only place I've seen where they can come into a courtroom, experts, specialists, remember detailed information from 12 and 13 years ago, maybe let's say 10 and 11 years ago, but don't have a piece of paper. It's amazing. But listen.
Heard testimony at a previous meeting that there was a team of at least 10 assistant DAs working on an election interference case, and at least 3 special counsel that are being paid as independent contractors, including Mr. Wade. Was that ever described to the county commission in any of the funding requests?
I don't recall that coming before the board.
So she never came to you and said, I'm going to need a lot of money here to conduct this prosecution of, now there's 16 different defendants I'm going to call it the election interference case. Was that ever expressed to the county commission that that's part of why you were asked to give $36.6 million?
Again, not with that level of detail. So again, trial expenses.
Just generically, not even for the type of prosecution.
I want to say for the 23 budget, and I will have to go back and verify this, that there was some communication where she identified a need for resources because she expected to have to retry a case that had been a high-profile case, as well as the gang matters that she has. I think there are a couple of those, and the elections, the elections interference matter as well. But again, it was a lump sum, not specific with line item details.
Right. So you think that was in her budget request, perhaps in 23? Are we talking about Young Thug trial that's been it's gone on forever and ever so far, or different gang related?
I believe there is more than one gang related, large scale prosecutorial matter. But yes, sir, that would be one of them.
And you think she may have also itemized the election interference case would require additional?
These people know nothing. They've been told that she's a constitutional officer and they can't tell her nothing. And she literally believes nobody in the United States, for America, or any other place, not even Washington, D.C. Nobody can tell her what to do. She thinks she's another branch of the government. But it's really pathetic hearing these people scramble, and no matter how soft-spoken Miss Whitmore try to sound, it just sounds like she's just a filibustering, just filling up the air. It's nothing of substance. And poor Mr. Pitts, he just lost in translation. And the attorney, she's present.
Funds or categorize that as an area of needed funding?
Yes, sir. Again, I would have to go back and look. Well, I don't, because
you don't have to go back anymore. You've got your right-hand woman right there to help you.
So, yes, sir. That was Sabrina McTeer, the county's budget manager. So this is from the 23 budget enhancement request, and the description says, and I'll just read it, the general rule: the more complicated a case, the more likely expert witnesses, e.g. professional services, are needed. That was in parentheses. State versus Tex MacGyver has been remanded to this office. This case alone cost $675,000 in professional services. I have this case and several anti-corruption cases that are being litigated in 23. It is sufficient to enhance this budget, and the request was $1.1 million.
So that was for Tex MacGyver and any other public corruption case?
Yes, sir. So that's the kind of
deception by any other name is still deception. She knew she was bringing charges against Donald Trump that August. She knew she had locked up Young Thug that May of 2022. But she went to Tex MacGyver, a retrial, asking for $600,000. And then they gave her $1.1 million. And we haven't heard Tex MacGyver case in the news. At least I haven't in Dallas. Maybe they've heard it every day in Atlanta. But we haven't heard anything about that case. So, guess I need to look it up and see how it's going. But deception, deception, deception.
Of description that I was perhaps not doing a very good job of, expressing. But
you're doing great. And as far as your recollection, Chairman Pitts, is that she never named that she would need a special prosecutor on any election interference case.
Not that I recall, sir.
Certainly never told you the names of who she might be hiring or how much she was going to have to pay them.
Not that I recall, sir.
Did she make other budget enhancement requests back in 2023, 21, or 22? I can't remember exactly when she was sworn in. Y'all know that?
Madam DA was sworn in and began her term in 2021. So we did receive enhancement requests from her for the 22 budget cycle, the 23, and the 24.
Okay. What was the $5 million enhancement request for clearing up homicide backlogs? Do y'all recall that? That was testified to here last meeting.
That was a request that came through in the middle of 2021. She requested additional staff to support a number of items, the outstanding homicide situation being one of them. Ultimately, in 2021, through a budget amendment process that we call budget soundings, the Board of Commissioners did authorize her to have funding for an additional 55 positions. Wow. It was a mix of attorneys, investigators, and administrative support personnel. And in 21, the cost that was necessary to begin to onboard those positions, because she would not be able to do all 55 at one time, was less than $800,000. I think the budget soundings was $780,000 and some change. But the full annual cost for that is the $5 million. And so we built that in then to her 2022 budget with the full year funding for all of the positions that the board awarded her mid-year in 2021.
And was there any mention in that $5 million enhancement request that would be needed for any type of public corruption investigation?
I will have to go back to the source document to confirm that.
What do you call that source document? Because I'm going to want to make sure I have adequately identified what I need to be produced.
I would call it a budget soundings request.
Okay. And can you provide those to me without me submitting an additional subpoena? I think they're included in what I've asked for. I may not have been as specific because I didn't know what to call it.
Yes, sir. I had intended to include the 2021 soundings information as part of the request for the budget information that was already included.
You can just follow up and get that to me or Secretary Cook at your convenience. And if you would do that for any of those sounding requests for 21, 22, 23, and 24, just to keep me up to speed. Because, Chairman Pitts, what I am hearing from you is that the Board of Commissioners never got any kind of specific request for additional funding to prosecute any election interference cases, other than that generic $1 million, in 23.
Not that I recall, sir.
And no specific information about who needed to be hired as an independent contractor or what they would cost. I understand Governor Barnes was too expensive, and I just didn't know if that's that y'all figured that out or she ruled him out for that reason.
No, not that I recall.
I am subject to hiring amount.
He's a gun for hire if anybody out there is paying attention. And pleasure to have you in the audience with us today, Governor Barnes. And I'm just wanting us to get a feel and for exactly how much oversight there is. It sounds like it's very loose as far as employment practices and expenditures for independent contractors.
Yeah, that information doesn't come before the board.
Right. Only you have to peel it out in these soundings and in the annual audit and in the budget submissions as she gives you the categories of what she needs.
That's correct. And when budget soundings come before the board, there's a little more detail and more specifics.
Right. Probably pretty difficult politically for you and the Board of Commissioners to reject a request for needed funding to clear up a backlog in homicide cases, right?
Well, I mean, we had such a tremendous number of cases that were so-called, had been there for up in the thousands. And we decided that the $75 million from the ARPA funds has already been referenced by Ms. Whitmore.
Right.
So in order to, we threw, $75 million of I think we received a total federal allocation of about $206 million in ARPA funds, and $75 million of that $206 million went to the justice system.
Okay.
And the justice system meaning everything that the CFO has outlined.
So that was back in the fall of 2021. It was about the same time Mr. Wade was being hired. And it wasn't mentioned to you that any of the enhanced money was going to go towards Mr. Wade or any other special prosecutor to prosecute election interference.
No, it was my understanding that $75 million was to be used for the justice system, and specifically, to reduce the tremendous backlog that we had.
And there was a $5 million enhancement that was from county funds, not the ORCA funds, or is that the same money?
Is that the same money?
No. The $5 million is general fund,
okay.
County.
And in that request, that was on top of the ORCA funds to get rid of the backlog of homicide cases.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir. She actually asked for over 100 positions when she made the request, and the way in which we addressed it was we already had the backlog program in development, and so we identified a certain number that would be funded through the backlog project out of the ARPA resources, and the balance we provided for out of the county's general fund.
And this is back in the fall of 2021.
Yes, sir.
2 years before her $1.1 million request for public corruption and Tex MacGyver.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now just listen to those numbers. She already has a $36 million budget, 36.6. And then the ORCA fund is $75 million. And remember, that's throughout the judiciary. And we also must remember that that includes the superior courts and all the other courts. And we know the Chief Superior Justice. Also, we know that Arrington on the Commissioner's Board and Hall are two people that have proven themselves to be compromised, not to mention the mayor and all of the wicked looking ministers that was standing on the steps of Jericho, because that felt just like the walls were coming tumbling down when I saw her standing amongst men, the woman who doesn't need a man, doesn't have one, don't mind taking somebody else's when they're sick and they're down. The woman thought she had a husband, and all the while, she didn't. She had I don't know what you would call him. He was a lowlife, I guess you could call him, who fell in love. Just like workplace love is just as American as apple pie. Oh, the tangle webs we weave. And these people are really deceiving these people of Fulton County. I'm sure by now the election, if they close at 7. It's been closed now for 32 minutes. And I'm not going to be excited because I believe that she's going to win that primary. But there is a reckoning day, and there is an equalizer. So we don't have to worry, really. You know, you can win the battle, but not the war. And that might be opposite. You know, I told you I can mess up a story. Yeah. You can win a round. But karma is coming back. And she comes around and round. Yet she does. So I think we've heard enough on her and the budget. I have a little bit more minutes allocated for that, but you guys could look at the video because I want to show these two, and then I want to get ready to say goodnight. I want to show Robin Yearty first because she was the one that testified first. And I want y'all to hear how she viewed their friendship. And I truly believe their breakup had to do with the love nest and all of that good stuff. And it came after she got rid of Miss Timpson, or during that same time. And in my opinion, I said it then before I even knew about Miss Timpson, that they was tying up their loose ends. So let's go here to Robin as she explains the relationship according to her. Very interesting. Let's stop sharing this. And let's present this. I hope this helped y'all understand what I see, the inner workings of what's going on in Fulton County. And I'm sure it could be going on in my county. I don't know, but we don't hear any of this. Not this time. We have had scandals and things of that nature. And I knew some of the people involved, and that was not right, but it happened the way it happened, and that's what it was. So just because we see this and it looks like this to us, we really are on the outside looking in. But I'm looking at this woman and hearing her. The people I know that got caught up in the craziness were really people that had a heart for the people. And that's why I believe they got caught up. Because they really served the people. Us, everyday people. Our state rep, you could go to her office, knock on the door, go inside, sit and talk with her. Call her anytime, day or night. She at that office working and would get on that phone and call anywhere in America to help you. These people really did love whatever it was that they loved. They served the people. Their staff, not everybody. Most of these people, you couldn't even call their office and talk to their liaison, let alone talking about the representative or the senator. No, but I know a couple that I could call, and anybody could call. You just got to know to call. That's why we vote them in office. They're here for us. Your state representatives and senators, and I don't know what you call them in your state, they are the people you call for state agencies. And then when you have an issue on a federal level, you call your Congress representative or senator. That's federal. When you have issues with your municipalities, you go to your city. You go to your mayor. You go to your commissioners. If it's a county issue, it works pretty much the same. It's just that each state has its own constitution, and they may have different names for their areas, for their, jurisdictions. They may even have different names for their officers, but the positions are pretty much the same. And we got to utilize these people. This is why we go and vote. Our vote matter because they don't want us to vote. Or they keep gearing us to vote for the wrong one. Got to do your own research. Bottom line. But let me go on and let y'all hear this so I'll get to talking and preaching. And church will be held for an extra 30 minutes or so. And I don't want to do that.
Yes.
Would you please state and spell your full name for the court?
Robin Latrice Yodi.
Thank you, Ms. Yurdy. Thank you for being here. Can you tell the judge when you first met Ms. Willis?
In college.
Okay.
So probably 90 or 91.
Okay. And have you been friends since 1990 or 91?
Yes.
Okay. When was the last time you spoke with Ms. Willis?
March of 2022.
Okay. From 1991-ish till 2022, were you what you would consider good friends with Ms. Willis?
Yes.
And did you all share personal information regularly?
Yes.
And did you even come and work with her at the DA's office?
Yes.
And when she needed a place to stay, did you let her stay at your apartment? It was a condo, right?
Condo, yes.
Okay. Do you remember approximately when she moved into your condo?
It was April of 2021.
Okay, great. And you know that Ms. Willis and Ms. Wade met at a conference in October of 2019?
I'm going to object to that, Your Honor, without a foundation for how this witness would know that. If Ms. Merchant can establish she has personal information of that, then certainly that's something the witness can testify to. But if she heard
Understood, Ms. Gross. All right, Ms. Merchant, if you could lay the foundation.
Do you have information that Ms. Willis and Mr. Wade met in October of 2019?
I'm going to renew my objection, Your Honor. Information is not sourced to personal information. If the question can be rephrased, then that may address my concern.
So Judge, I just want to make sure that I understand. So they've objected to me calling Willis and Wade.
It's just a matter of foundation. If you can just rephrase.
Do you have knowledge of when Willis and Wade met?
I'm going to object again. Personal knowledge.
Overruled.
Thank you. Do you have personal knowledge of when Willis and Wade met?
Yes. She told me that they met at a conference. I don't know what conference.
Okay.
I'm going to renew my objection, Your Honor. Clearly, this is not first-hand information from this witness. It's hearsay that was...
But you said she told me.
Yes, it's statement against interest, Judge. If Ms. Willis...
Just pause.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Ms.
Yes.
Cross.
The representation of the witness, the testimony of the witness was that Ms. Willis, District Attorney Willis, had a conversation with her. There is no statement against interest. District Attorney Willis is not a party opponent in this case. The information that the witness has testified to came from Ms. Willis, and we have a hearsay objection for that.
Why wouldn't she be considered a party opponent in this context?
She is a representative of the state, Your Honor. This isn't private litigation or civil litigation. Obviously, the court's aware this is Ms. Willis is not on trial. Ms. Willis is not a party to the litigation outside her obligation to pursue criminal charges for the state.
Ms. Merchant, I guess it's evolved into a hearsay objection.
Yes, Judge, and we plan on calling Ms. Willis to the stand. She's under subpoena, so hearsay will be cured. If there is a hearsay objection as far as that issue. But we do still think that it's a statement against interest. Ms. Willis has filed a document that states that they met at this municipal court conference. So,
Your Honor, I think maybe I can streamline a little bit. State will stipulate that District Attorney Willis and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at the judicial conference that we've been talking about. There's no reason to get it secondhand from this witness. Well, that's true.
All right, you accept the stipulation, Ms. Merchant?
Yes. All right. Am I permitted then to ask questions about that since it's now not hearsay?
If it's just to a stipulation, if it's just to that basic fact, I don't think we need a question, but if there's a follow-up that you think is admissible, go for it.
Ms. Yeardy, you have personal knowledge that Ms. Willis and Mr. Wade began their romantic relationship soon after this time that they met at the municipal court.
I'm going to object to that question. That certainly is a leading question. No foundation has been laid for how this witness would have personal knowledge of that. And until that's happened, the state objects.
Judge,
I think you can do a yes or no and then follow up with how she knows it.
Thank you. Do you know if Ms. Willis and Mr. Wade started dating in October of 2019?
I don't know if it was October of 2019.
Could it possibly be November of 2019?
Could possibly.
Okay. And when we spoke, you said it was shortly after the municipal court conference, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you know that their relationship, their personal relationship, began shortly after this municipal court conference?
Yes.
And when I say personal, romantic. I just want to make sure we don't get in an argument over what personal and romantic is later. When I ask you personal, do you take that to mean romantic?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand it that their relationship began in 2019 and continued until the last time you spoke with her?
Yes.
And you were essentially her best friend during this time, right?
Not best friend, good friend.
Good friend, okay, close friend. And so would you frequently socialize with her?
Yes.
And you saw her at work every day?
Yes.
So you had a chance to see them interact together on a personal level?
Yes.
And so from everything that you saw, heard, witnessed, it's your understanding that they were in a romantic relationship beginning in 2019?
Yes.
And when you left the DA, I'm sorry, let me ask you, you said that Ms. Willis came to live with you in April of 2021, I'm sorry, April 1st, 2020 or 2021?
She didn't live, I never lived with her.
Okay, I'm sorry, she took over your lease in April 1st, 2020, correct?
No, 2021.
Okay, I had it both ways, so I'm glad you clarified. So when she took over your lease in April 1st, 2021, it's your understanding she moved out of the house that she was sharing with her father and started staying at the condo?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that that's because she needed to have her own space?
Yes.
Away from her father?
Yes.
Okay. When you left the DA's office, was it, were you fired?
No, I resigned.
You resigned, okay. Just one moment, Joe. Can you tell us why you resigned the DA's office?
The number of things that was happening.
A number of things that were happening, is that what you said, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. What was happening that caused you to resign?
was a spiral of things. So I guess the last straw is I was put in a department that I knew had no knowledge about. Something happened, and I didn't like it. They didn't like it, and that was it.
Okay. Did you have any falling outs with Miss Willis?
Well, we never spoke after that.
You never spoke after that, okay. And so you're, without going into all the painstaking details, there's no doubt in your mind that from 2019 until 2022, Miss Willis and Mr. Wade were in a romantic relationship.
What's the question?
You have no doubt that their romantic relationship was in effect from 2019 until the last time you spoke with her?
No doubt.
Okay. And that's based on your personal observations and speaking with them and seeing them together and things like that?
Yes.
Okay. No other questions? Thank you. The other folks may have some questions for you, Ms. Yurdy.
Sit down.
You want me to go to the
if it's more than a couple questions, then sure, but if not.
It's only a couple questions.
Okay.
I think, can the court reporter hear me okay? Ma'am, let me be very specific. Did you talk with Miss Willis about her romantic relationship with Mr. Wade?
Yes.
Did Miss Willis tell you on more than one occasion that she was engaged in a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade prior to you leaving the district attorney's office?
Did she tell me or did I observe?
I'm saying right now what to tell me.
Yes.
Did she tell you that in the year of 2020?
Yes.
In the year of 2021?
Yes.
Are you certain that Miss Willis told you about the romantic relationship with Mr. Wade prior to November 1st of 2021?
Yes.
Now, did you also have observations of Mr. Wade and Miss Willis together prior to November 1st of 2021?
Yes.
And are those observations, were those in a social setting?
Yes.
And did you observe them do things that are common among people having a romantic relationship?
Yes.
Such as, can you give us an example?
Hugging, kissing, just affection.
All before November 1st of 2021, correct?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Mr. Stocks.
Okay, so we've heard Miss Yurty's part. Now let's hear Miss Willis tell her part.
So after that, you started dating shortly thereafter.
Let me see, where did I want to start? Okay, let me go back just a teeny weeny bit. Okay, let's hear Miss Willis' rendition of the friendship.
After that, you started dating shortly thereafter, correct?
A lie. That's one of your lies.
Okay. Do you know Robin Yurdy?
I know her as Robin Bryant. I knew her. So Robin did not go to my college. She went to the college of, I went to Howard University. She went to Morgan State. I met her through some people I knew. In college, we hung out a bit, not much because she was in Baltimore and I was in Washington, D.C., but we hung out a bit. After college, I lost contact with her. I probably didn't see Robin again until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, a chance meeting here in Atlanta, but we did not have a consistent relationship from when I left college and came to Emory Law School here in Atlanta. But 8 to 10 years ago, just by happenstance, I ran into her. So she was in Atlanta.
You have been friends with Robin for 30-something years.
Did you hear my answer, madam?
Yes, and I'm asking if you've been friends with her for 30-something years.
I've known her for 30-something years. We certainly hung out and partied together in college. She was from the D.C. area. She would come home, we'd party together. Wasn't close, but she was certainly in the girlfriends that partied together. And then, like I said, I ran into her about 10 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. So but we didn't talk throughout that time period. I didn't see her. I didn't even know where she was. When I ran into her, I was surprised she was in Atlanta. And so, yes, I have known her probably since...
We need her in here to go over all of this and to explain exactly what happened. So we was asked the court that the court allow Ms. Willis to be called and interrogated on these matters.
And I would too, Your Honor.
Just a moment, Ms. Willis. So, Ms. Cross, I don't know if you want to speak with Ms. Willis now. It's sounding like maybe they're withdrawing the objection to the motion.
I believe the motion to...
Or does Ms. Willis want to take the lead here?
We'll draw the motion to quash Ms. Willis.
Based on the what? I'm going to go.
Okay, so the position of the district attorney at this point is that
leave our home. At the same time, as luck would have it, Robin wanted to give up her lease because she wanted to move in with this new man she met. Like I said, I ran into her about 10 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. So but we didn't talk throughout that time period. I didn't see her. I didn't even know where she was. When I ran into her, I was surprised she was in Atlanta. And so, yes, I have known her probably since 1990, 1991, but we have not maintained a consistent relationship that whole time.
For the last 10 years or 5, whatever you'd like to classify it as, have you been friends with her?
I have not spoken to Robin in over a year. I certainly do not consider her a friend now. I think that she, you know, there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished, and I think that she betrayed our friendship.
So let's narrow it down, the timeline now. So my questions are going to be from the time period of 2019 until she no longer was employed for you, the last time you all talked. So all of my next questions are just focused on that time frame, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Up until she left your office.
Yes, ma'am.
During 2019, you all were friends, correct?
Yes, we knew each other in 2019.
During 2020, you all were friends, correct?
Yes, we were friends during that time period.
During 2021, you all were friends, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And such good friends that when you needed a place to stay, you asked her if you could take over her lease.
That's a lie.
You did not move into her apartment?
I did, but that's not the way you characterize it. Is wrong.
I asked if you could take over her lease.
I did not ask if I could take over her lease.
Did you move into her apartment?
I moved into her condo in April of 21. The circumstances around that were that Robin met her husband. They wanted to move into another and separate place. She wanted to get rid of her condo. My father was living with me at the house. Because of this case and because of my stance on gangs, my life was being threatened regularly. My father urged me to leave our home. At the same time, as luck would have it, Robin wanted to give up her lease because she wanted to move in with this new man she met, who eventually became her husband. And so, as life circumstances worked, my dad was begging me to leave the house. He was afraid for me, afraid for his grandchildren. She wanted someone to take over her lease so that she didn't, have to pay a fee or get abandoned. And so, I don't remember when, but probably March or April of 21, I moved in and take over her lease.
And did you pay her or did you pay the leasing agent?
No, I don't even know who the leasing agent was. I paid her.
You paid her. Did you pay her cash or did you use a card?
There were some times that I would give her cash, but mostly I paid her via Cash App. That would be the most convenient thing. So I would not only give her rent, but then like when the utilities would come in, whatever the utility was, she might be like, I need $70, I need $100, whatever it was. And we never had a problem with money. Whatever she told me it was, I never asked to see a bill. I never questioned her. I just gave it to her.
What percentage would you say you paid cash versus Cash App?
Oh, the vast majority was Cash App. I don't know what percentage, I'm not going to guess that, but the vast majority was Cash App. But there would be times she would say, you know, this bill came in at $70, here goes $70.
Did you have a monthly rent amount that you paid her?
I can't remember. It was $1,500. I can't remember what it was. And it would vary, which I don't understand to this day. But like I said, I never questioned her.
When did you move out?
She said it was, that's what I paid.
When did you move out?
I abruptly moved out in February, either late January or early February of 22.
Of 22? Yes, February 2022, is that what you said?
January, February of 22. I believe it is January, but I paid her half the rent of February of 22 is what I remember. And because I was offering to pay the whole rent, even though I didn't live there, I didn't think it was right. And I ended up just paying her half the rent.
So that's after you moved out. You said you paid her half of that. Okay. And the time that you said you had to move out of your house because you were scared, did your dad stay there at your house?
My father was concerned. Yes, we were both concerned.
Okay. But he remained there.
My father's 80 years old. He would have been 79. He was scared to death of COVID. You have to go back to when this was. My father's an older man. I wanted him to move out. We had some discussions about him moving out, and what he decided was the risk of COVID was more dangerous than the risk of the people that were threatening. Typical man, more worried about his daughter and his grandchildren than his own safety. You'll get to meet him and you'll understand he doesn't scare too easily.
So your grandkids or his grandkids were living at the house as well at that time?
Well, I don't know how old your children are, but when you have adult children, they leave and they come back. They leave and they come back. So there have been periods of time that they're there, they come, they do whatever they want to do. Children do what children do. As long as their mother has a house, they'll come to it. Unfortunately, now the threats because of this case have gotten so extreme. I just pay a mortgage and no one lives there.
And that's what I was going to ask you. So when you moved out in, I think you said April 2021, you left your dad and your two kids at the house?
My dad and my two kids were not at the house.
They were not? Okay, so they didn't still live at your house?
My youngest daughter certainly did not live there. Okay. My oldest daughter would come back and forth. I can't say month for month when she was there or when she was not there. I know that she has been there post me moving out. At this time, no one is at my house.
Okay. So at some point after you moved out for the safety reasons, at least one of your children did come back.
Ms. Merchant, can we get to either the relationship or the financial benefit?
Yes. Let's see, we were back at 2021. So you were still friends with Miss Yeardy then. Were you also friends with Mr. Bradley?
I've never been friends with Mr. Bradley.
You've never been friends with Mr. Bradley?
No, I don't consider us to be friends. I don't dislike Mr. Bradley, but I don't consider us to be friends.
Is he someone that you would have in your phone and you would message with?
I might have text messaged him.
Okay. Would you text message him and Mr. Wade on the same conversations?
I don't recall doing that, but if it happened, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, so that wouldn't surprise you, the three of you. Okay. How frequently would you think that the three of you would have texted?
Not very. I wouldn't think very often, but you're asking me to recall. I don't even know what time period you're asking me to recall, but I'm not going to speak to that because I just really don't know the answer to that. And so I don't want to speculate as to how often that would happen. But it's not out of my practice to text two people on one text message. So if you told me that happened and showed it to me, it wouldn't surprise me, although I have no recollection of it.
But there would be some record of it in your phone, or the phone records would have some record of those texts.
Perhaps.
Talk about, you said that sometimes you paid Miss Yeardy cash. When you went on vacation with Mr. Wade, let's just go one by one. Let's start with the first one. What's the first time you went on vacation with Mr. Wade?
I think the first time we went on vacation was around April of 22, and a vacation is a stretch but I'm trying to be comprehensive. I recall April of 22. His birthday is March the 18th. So that would have been his 49th birthday. I took him to like Tennessee for the day. I think we went to a museum. I think we might have stayed the night. I'm not sure. But I mean, Tennessee's kind of hard to call a vacation, but I just am trying to be inclusive. And it, like I said, I know it wasn't more than a day.
So you didn't spend the night?
I think that we did. That's what I'm telling you. I think that there's a possibility that we stayed that night in April of 22.
Who paid for the hotel?
I think I did. It was his birthday.
And would you have used a credit card?
Probably, maybe a debit.
And when did you start dating?
When I started dating Mr. Wade? It was right around then.
April 2022?
22, yes. 2022. It was around then. I don't know, like, you know, it's not like when you're in grade school and you send a little letter and it says, will you be my girlfriend, and you check it. I don't know the day that we started seeing each other, but it was early 22 is my recollection.
Okay, early 22. And you all went to Florida on vacation as well?
I don't recall going to Florida on.
I don't want to recall her lying anymore. Now, I want y'all to just think about this. Now, she says that they started dating early 2022, April 2022. She moved out of Robin Yurtie's, he said, end of January, mid-February 2022. But yet, when they talked, they said he came to the condo, and he was at the condo, and they was eating at the table. So now, if she moved out of the lady's place in February, and they didn't start talking to April, why were they in the condo? It's these kind of things that people don't think about, and they say y'all just in people's business. This story is just a lie, lie, lie. But we've heard enough of her lies. And again, I don't know if y'all have heard the news or not, if she won or not. I'm sure it'll be news soon, if it hasn't already been announced, because I don't know when their polls close. But I do know this. We'll be on tomorrow night, and we'll have something to talk about. So I'll check into it. But I wanted to put this out because it's just really a sin and a shame. The way this lady go around talking, the way she keeps enacting the race card. I call it the stacked deck. But she knows exactly what she's doing, because she said that, you know, now they have more Asiatic DAs than they've ever had. And now they got to call their daddy on us. So they've been knowing this system is this way. They've been operating in this system. And she thinks she is totally above the law. But they'll show her, just like in Steven Seagal movie. They'll show her. And as Dick Gregory would say, unless she live on the second floor, that's the only way she's above the law. Other than that, we will see. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Please hit the like button. I hope that you all stayed to the end. Share, comment. Feel free at any time to donate to the channel. You can donate via Cash App, or you can do a thank you on the video. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to get ready to leave the Tiger's Den. And as you know, I believe the children are our future. And that's the way I'm going to go out. Have a beautiful evening. Goodbye. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us who we used to be. Everybody's searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone to fulfill my needs. A lonely place to be. So I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. If I failed, if I succeed, at least I'll live as I believe. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity, because the greatest love of all is happening to me. I found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. And if by chance that special place that you've been dreaming of takes you to a lonely place, find yourself in love.